Hello everyone and welcome. In this video we're going to be checking out the 2015 Volkswagen GTI. This is a hatchback with 5 seats, and this particular trim is the 2-door manual. Pretty well hidden LED front fog lights. This vehicle has a coefficient of drag of 0.31. As tested, MSRP comes to $25,605. Okay, let's go for a test drive. So starting things off with the manual transmission, very similar in feel to the Volkswagen Beetle R that I drove. It's just a very smooth system. The shifting is very smooth, not much effort in the clutch pedal. And so overall the system's just very easy to use, very comfortable, not a whole lot of effort required versus something like my Subaru STI where it's really notchy and there's a lot of clutch effort that's required in order to shift gears. So the system's very smooth. The thing that it has in common with the Volkswagen Beetle R that I don't like is just how tall the gearing is. So in first gear you can go up, maybe past 40 miles an hour. In second gear you can go past 70 miles an hour. And I think the drawback of doing this is that you lose a little bit of torque. And I'm not sure if that's because it's front wheel drive. They don't want to have too much torque, because you'll have torque steer and things like that, which, wheel slip. And so I'm not sure why it's done, but it's not bad. I wouldn't say, it's necessarily something wrong with it, that it has such tall gearing, but I think it could be a little bit quicker if it did have shorter gearing and, you maybe top out at 60 or in the 50s in second gear, so you had a little bit more torque when you put your foot down in second gear. As is, you can pretty much just merge onto the highway in second gear, get up to cruising speed, and then put it in sixth, which is a little strange. And the other thing is, if you are in first gear and first gear is really tall and you're in really congested traffic, it can make it difficult to creep at a really low speed. If you have shorter gearing where it tops out at maybe 30 and then you can kind of creep along at 3 miles an hour rather than 5 or 6. But that's just a minor complaint. Overall, the gearbox, I actually do really like it. It's very smooth, very comfortable, and pretty effortless. And you do have a good amount of torque when you do put your foot down. So I'm pretty much just going to leave it in second because I can. And so we're doing about 45 now, and it's in second gear, less than 4,000 RPM. But when you do put your foot down, you do have a little bit of lag as far as turbo lag, but it is a good amount of torque. So it's a pretty quick car, and this does have variable gearing for the steering, so the steer ratio changes depending on speed and other things like that. So I've got it currently, I'm going to put it over into sport, and it actually does reduce the effort in the steering, and you definitely do feel it. Not too much body roll going through this corner pretty hard, putting my foot flat out, and I'm going to turn off the traction and stability aids for this next corner and see how it does. I don't notice really too much understeer or oversteer. It seems to do pretty well. Now this car is actually pretty light. In the 2-door manual trim, it's under 3,000 pounds. So that's really nice. The fact that it's that light, has 258 pound-feet of torque. So it is pretty nimble and pretty quick at the same time. So a very enjoyable car that also is somewhat practical. You've got a pretty big hatchback there, pretty good amount of space, and you can also fit people if you need it. So from that standpoint, and the fact that it gets really good gas mileage, all around there's really not much to complain about this vehicle. It's fun to drive, it's quick, it gets good fuel economy, and it's practical. What else do you want? Now let me just make a quick public service announcement to anyone out there who's thinking, maybe I'm going to buy the Volkswagen Beetle R line because it has pretty much the same engine as this. It's a 2.0 liter, 210 horsepower turbocharged engine, but here's some differences between this and the R line. This has more torque in the engine, so they've tuned it for more torque down low, 50 pound-feet, so pretty significant, and you're getting a car that weighs up to 250 pounds less depending on the trim level, like the one I'm in right now. It gets better fuel economy, 3 miles per gallon, better on the highway, and it also did better in my own testing. So it weighs less, it has more torque, it has better fuel economy, it has seats in the rear that you can use. The rear seats actually have cup holders and are usable. You've got AC vents back there. It's actually not all that bad in the back, and you have the ability to fold down those rear seats, and you've got tons of space back there. So far more practical. So it's more practical. It's pretty much better than the Beetle R line in every way. And guess what? It costs less. So normally something that's going to have have so many benefits over something else is going to cost more, and that's how the world works. No, this car is cheaper than the Beetle R-Line that I'm driving currently versus the Beetle R-Line that I tested, and it's better than it in every single way. So, you know, it's just kind of crazy that the Beetle R-Line exists. Get the GTI. Now, as far as the ride quality, you don't really feel much vibration through the steering wheel. You do feel a little vibration through your seat and through the pedals as far as what's beneath you. Overall, not too bad, and actually the cabin noise in here seems pretty good, so we'll test it out once we get on the highway. So the steering overall, I don't notice the fact that it changes the ratio of it, so it does a nice job of kind of seamlessly transitioning between the different ratios, and overall, you know, I don't notice it too much. That said, you do notice the fact that between sport and comfort, basically the two different driving modes, normal and sport, you do have a decent amount more effort if you do put it in the sport mode. Now, as far as the brake pedal feel, it's pretty aggressive, pretty firm, and you know, it does feel pretty good overall. Not much travel, good linear progression to it as you press your foot down. I have noticed, you know, when you're in really slow situations, it may be a little bit touchy, but other than that, you know, it does feel pretty good. Throttle pedal, same story, feels good. You know, you don't have any deadband or anything like that in it. Nice linear progression to it as you work your way through. And also what I like about it, you know, you can change it as well to kind of, whether you like it in normal or sport, how aggressive you want it to be, depending on how much you put your foot down. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get a highway pull in here. So what I'm gonna do is put it in first gear. I'll come to a stop. I've got it in sport for the throttle mode, and I've got the traction control completely off. So come to a stop, bring my revs up to about 2,000, let the clutch out. We're at 60, decently quick. So I've got the cruise control set at 65, and it's actually not too bad in here as far as road noise. You do hear a little bit of tire noise, not too much wind noise. We're looking at about 76, 77 decibels based on the reading that I took. So overall, not too bad, decently quiet in here, and it's not that harsh of a noise. So overall, I feel like it's pretty good. Okay, I've completed my fuel economy test course. It's approximately 53 miles, primarily highway with some city and hills mixed in. This car is rated 25 in the city, 34 on the highway. And as you can see, it achieved 41.3 miles per gallon. So very good fuel economy out of this, pretty incredible. And there was also a decent amount of traffic this run, so it could have been probably slightly better. Now, there's something I think I have to admit about this car, and it's just that it hasn't made me smile as much as some of the other cars in its price range. And I'm not saying that it's worse than those cars. In fact, in almost every way aside from fun factor, it's better than those cars. But I think the perfect analogy for this is that it's the perfect student. It gets straight A's in every subject, it's punctual, it's helpful, it's a great athlete, and Monday through Friday, you know, it's perfect. But when it comes time for the weekend, it's one of its peers that you'd rather be hanging out with. And so I was trying to figure out, you know, why do I have this feeling about this car? Why doesn't it make me as excited as some of these other cars I've driven? And I think it comes down to three things. The first of which is basically the amount of effort that it takes to drive this car. It's a very effortless car to drive, and in that sense, it's very refined, it's very mature, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But for me personally, the amount of effort required for the steering, for the clutch pedal, and for the gear shift is extremely low, and because of that, it doesn't feel all that involved. And so for me personally, you know, I think it would be a little bit more fun if it was a little bit more aggressive, you know, if it required a little bit more effort in each of those categories. Now, the second thing is the gearing, and I've already mentioned this, but basically it just seems like the gearing is more so made for efficiency rather than anything else. It doesn't really encourage fast and furious style shifting, not that any cars have that many gears, but you know, basically if you wanted, you could just leave it in second gear and you could never change gears. And not that that would make any sense, but you could drive in the city and on the highway in second gear. It's that long of a gear. And so, you know, I think it's kind of crazy, the gearing, and it's just more so for efficiency. And I think if it did have shorter gearing, you know, it'd encourage shifting a bit more, which is fun to do. And it would also give you a little bit more torque down low. I think that'd be a bit more fun. And so that's just another one of the three pegs, I think, that's made its fun factor not quite as high as I would like. And then the final thing is that it's front wheel drive. And I don't think because a car is front wheel drive, it can't be fun. So don't like get that impression. but it is part of the equation, I think, here. And you know, this is one of the better ones for sure as far as front wheel drive cars. You know, there's the Integra, which is a great front wheel drive car as far as how fun it is to drive. You know, and I'm partially biased in saying that because I own one, but I truly do believe it's one of the best front wheel drive vehicles out there. And you know, this is similar in many ways. It is fun for a front wheel drive car, but to once again put things in terms of Fast and Furious, you know, it doesn't encourage Tokyo drifting. So, you know, those are the kind of things that I think, you know, it's the three reasons why, for me personally, I haven't been smiling as much driving this car as I thought I would have been, even though, like, it really fits what I'm interested in very well. It's a hot hatch, you know, it's got plenty of torque down low. The hatchback gives you tons of cargo space, and you can fit 2 passengers in the back. It's very fuel efficient, and it's decently quick. And so, you know, it does a lot of things really, really well. It's very refined, it's very mature, and I think it's just that I'm not mature enough for it to fully enjoy it. Okay, let's have a look under the hood. So checking out the engine bay, it is somewhat cramped in here, and you do have this plastic engine cover, but it can be easily removed, so we'll just set that aside. And checking for serviceability, you've got your coolant fill right here, your oil fill here, engine oil dipstick right there. You've got your battery here tucked back, but on the driver's side, plenty of easy access to that. And then you've got your brake fluid reservoir over here. Now your engine air filter, you do need tools to access. Here you've got your windshield washer fluid, and then for your fuse box, it is just a simple quick tab in order to get inside of that. This is a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder cast iron block with aluminum heads, dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder with variable valve timing on both the intake and the exhaust. It produces 210 horsepower at 4,500 RPM and 258 pound-feet of torque at 1,500 RPM. Okay, now following the path of the airflow, we've got our air coming in here and flowing into this air intake filter, then passing back to the inlet portion of the turbocharger, where it then travels back to the front. You can kind of follow it here, and then it travels down over to the side where it goes inside of the inlet of the intercooler, across the intercooler, back over, and then up into this electronically controlled throttle body, where it then passes into the intake manifold, as you can see here in plastic, then into the cylinders, and then out the exhaust on the rear, where it then travels through the exhaust portion of the turbocharger. The exhaust collects in a single pipe traveling to the rear, then entering a muffler and exiting through one of 2 tailpipes. Engine power is sent through a 6-speed manual transmission to the 2 front wheels. These are 18-inch wheels all around, wrapped in 225/40 Bridgestone tires. 12.3-inch ventilated disc brakes up front. This is matched with a McPherson strut style suspension. So here you can see the steering linkage. We do have some use of aluminum in both that linkage and then this knuckle here. And you can see the beefy anti-roll bar. Everything in here pretty much painted or coated in order to prevent rust. And then behind the anti-roll bar, you can see the CV joint there for the drive axle going in. 10.7-inch solid disc brakes in the rear. This is matched with a multi-link suspension setup. And as you can see, separate spring and shock. This allows you to keep that flat profile in the trunk without that spring intruding. Okay, let's have a look at the interior. You do have keyless entry, cloth seats with red stitching, mechanically adjustable. Okay, so checking out the interior, things in here, honestly, it looks pretty simple, pretty spacious. So it's got a nice clean look to it, which I like, and it also feels pretty open, so I like that too. These seats are pretty wide, and you know, the cloth isn't exactly soft, but it feels pretty durable, and they definitely have a decent amount of cushion, so they're pretty comfortable seats overall. Decent amount of leg room. I have noticed, you know, my knee kind of does interfere with the steering column at times, and I do have the seat pretty low. You know, I could probably go a little bit lower, but the steering column does come down a little bit, but you do have plenty of leg room, and so long as your feet are on the pedals, you know, you're not really going to be interfering with that steering column. You've got automatic windows for both doors, and you also have electronically adjustable side mirrors. This steering wheel I do like, and they've actually put the cruise control on the steering wheel itself, so I like that too. And then you can also change between, you know, radio stations, change your volume, connect to your phone, things like that, all on the steering wheel, so I do like that. Looking ahead at the display, there's all kinds of information that you can go through here. Average speed, distance you've traveled, travel time, some different things: range, average consumption, fuel consumption, oil temperature, speed warning, and there's more menus in here too. So you've got a compass, you've got your music, you've got your telephone, you have vehicle status, and you also have a lap timer. Pretty simple gauges overall. You've got your tach on the left, speedometer on the right, coolant temperature, and your fuel tank level. And then you also have a trip computer as well as your cruise control setting there. You've got the compass and a clock up top. So some pretty useful information, and then the outside temperature as well. Moving on to the infotainment system here, fairly small screen, but it is a fairly decent touch screen. And so what I've got in here is this car mode where you can, check out some different things about your car, vehicle status, driving data, things like that. So that'll tell you, about your stability control and things like that you've got pulled up. Your media, so you can, hook up your phone, things like that. You can go to sound and, adjust the bass, mid-range, treble, things like that. Haven't been that thrilled with the audio system. The mid-range is okay. The bass and treble could use a little work, but it's okay. And so moving on to the climate control, I love it. I love the simple 3-knob method. You have your temperature, fan speed, and where do you want it blowing. Very simple. You don't have to take any time to think about it. You don't even really have to look away from the road. You just put it where you want and you're done. I love that. I love the simplicity of it. I wish more cars did things like that. Then down here you've got driving mode, and so you'll see it pulls up a thing here. So you've got normal, sport, and then individual. And so individual, you can actually see what it's changing. So the steering on normal, and so what that does is it has a decent amount of power assist, and then if you put it on sport, then you can reduce the amount of power assist that it has. The engine, then you have the different mapping, normal or sport. So with sport, your throttle pedal is going to be a little bit more responsive. It's going to get to higher RPMs with less pressing of the throttle pedal. Now, as far as storage, there's a good amount of storage in here. You've got this space over to the left. You've got these 2 cup holders and this center console here. There's my wallet. And then you've got these 2 12-volt outlets, one in there, one in here. And you also have a card holder and a coin holder. So if you do collect coins, and maybe that's one of the niche markets that Volkswagen's going for here, you're going to like this. They've got coin holders here. You've got some space here. Now wait, more coin holders. There's some coin holding going on right here. There's some coin holding, or maybe that's SD, coin holding going on right here. More card holding. They've got a bunch of SD card slots right here. So I guess if you're a photographer too, then this is the car for you. You've got 4 SD card slots in here. They've also got AC control in here, so you can kind of cool down this compartment. There's another SD slot, and there's a CD slot in there. So all kinds of kind of strange storage for unique items. But overall, you do have a decent amount of storage. One thing that I think is interesting, so Volkswagen and some of the German manufacturers, they put these things in here so you can connect up your iPhone. And what I think's interesting is that, so I just drove a Mercedes and it has the iPhone 5 or iPhone 6 connector versus the new Volkswagen comes with the iPhone 4 connector. So I guess they, if you're driving a Volkswagen, they don't anticipate you upgrading your phone all that often. Whereas if you have the Mercedes, you're probably up to date with technology or something like that. I don't know how it goes, but it's always interesting that they give you something so old. I mean, this is 2 generations behind and they're sticking it in a 2015 car. Regardless, you can probably have that changed at the dealer, so it's no big deal. Now, moving on to visibility, out the front's really good and to the sides is really good. You've got a nice tall window here, so plenty of visibilities up front. Checking out the rear is actually pretty good as well, and it's a nice large window, so when you're looking through the rear view mirror, you've got plenty of visibility out the back. You do have a fairly large C-pillar back there, and then checking your blind spot, not too bad overall, looks pretty decent, and you've got a decent amount of visibility. This B-pillar is fairly large, but overall you can see pretty well. One other thing as far as storage, you have this sunglass holder up here as well. You do have a decent sized trunk, and you also have 60-40 split folding rear seats, so you've got some more space that you can get if you fold those rear seats down. Underneath the floor cover, you do have a temporary spare as well. Okay, so sitting in the rear, I've got the front seat adjusted to where I will be driving, and as you can see, my legs are kind of pressed up against it. So as far as legroom in the rear, it's not all that much. That said, there's actually a decent amount of space for my feet, so it's not all that cramped, it's just for my legs. And you also have a cup holder right here, which is pretty cool, as well as the cup holder which folds down in the center, and you also have AC vent, so that's pretty cool that they've included that for a 2-door. So for it being a 2-door, a decent amount of space back here, it's not all that unreasonable. And then you can also fold this down in case you have skis or something like that you want to fold through the center, then you can do that instead of just folding down the seats. So in general, I just think this car makes a lot of sense for the money. You know, it's practical, it's fuel efficient, it's fun, it's lightweight, and it's fairly quick. So, you know, it kind of does it all, and I like that. That's why I like hatchbacks so much, and that's why I like, you know, turbocharged engines thrown in these hatchbacks. They're great cars, so I've enjoyed driving this. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below.